Folks, good morning. Chassidus for davening and some coffee. Baruch atah Adonai, Chaylam Shabbos Dvarei. Chaim. Ooh, Chaim. We started a new mimer yesterday. Now we're going to get right into the wise child, the wise son. And the wise son is asking, what are the edus chukim mishpatim, the testimonies, statutory laws that are beyond logic, and the logical ordinances of the Torah that our God has commanded you. Our God commanded you. It's a little odd kind of statement. Oh, sorry, someone's at the front door. And looks, no one's there. Thank you. All right. A homecoming. L'chaim. So why commanded you? Why excluding? I mean, the commands are to the wise son, to him too. So the question is, before the giving of the Torah, our forefathers and foremothers, they fulfilled mitzvahs. The primary mitzvah that they fulfilled was in spirit, was with intent. You know, as the saying goes, it's the thought that counts. So it was more about not the physical act that they were doing. The physical act was merely a means for a heartfelt, deeper mindfulness. But after the Torah, it's the action. And that's his question. That's his question. Why? How do we understand that? So, for example, like in our case, right, it's Pesach, eating matzah. That eating matzah, if someone were to contemplate, meditate upon the vast meaning, deep, profound understanding of matzah, but not eat it, they don't fulfill the mitzvah. They have to eat it. And if they eat it and they're not really so in tune with what the mystical or even simple meaning of the matzah, I mean, they have to know that it is God's desire. But besides that, they fulfill the mitzvah, but just by the act of eating. Does that make sense? And that's what he's saying, eschem, you, meaning you after the giving of the Torah. And so, no, what's the answer? Good question. Intuitively, we feel that mitzvahs are about the intent. Again, as we say, it's the thought that counts. But Here we're saying it's the opposite. The thought's not sufficient. It's the act that's important. So why is that? So we give the answer to the Ben Chacham. Is that slaves who were to Pharaoh in Egypt, and God took us out from Egypt, and he commanded us to do these laws, statutory laws, meaning that going out of Egypt was a preparation for Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, Mount Sinai. And Matan Torah, giving of the Torah, Mount Sinai, 2.5 million people, Jewish people there at the foot of Mount Sinai, all heard and saw the same experience, not one different than the other. God revealed himself. God expressed himself with the commandments. And that gave us the power at that time that we do physical acts of mitzvahs. And through that, we actually draw down even more and even greater than what our patriarchs did through their mitzvahs in the spirit. We draw down Atzmos, the core essence of God, through the action of doing a mitzvah. That's our response. Now, based on that, we need to understand. So that's the basic understanding of the question and the answer. But there's now going to be new questions as a result. So, okay, we're saying that the wise son asking a wise question, a very wise question. Intuitively we feel that an action is for the, an action is a means for the heartfelt intent. This cup is meant for its contents, right? The cup is not it's only a physical thing that, without the contents of the coffee, of the l'chaim, what's the cup? So likewise, everything in life, the physical act is about the feeling you have in the physical act, is about the mindfulness that you have in it. L'chaim. It's like, you brought your loved one flowers and there was no heartfelt expression in it. Oh, by the way, here, have some flowers. Nothing heartfelt. That action doesn't mean too much to the person who receives it. Right? So that's a good question. But God says, you know what? I want those actions. Now, of course, he wants them also to be heartfelt. But the question, the answer to his question is that even when it's not heartfelt, it's accepted. It's a mitzvah. It's an attachment. It's a connection. And that's the uniqueness of Matan Torah, of the giving of the Torah. What happened? Right? And we're explaining that's why he says, that's why in his question, what is it that God, in his question, that the edus, the chukim umishpatim, the 3 different categories of mitzvahs, that our God, so he's including himself, but it's commanding you. Now, he could have said commanding us just the same, because he's also part of the Torah that was given after Mount Sinai, that he was commanded. So why is he saying you? Say us. Doesn't answer that properly. We understand we want to make a distinction between the patriarchs, the matriarchs, and after the giving of the Torah. Fine. Get that. How is it that a physical act draws down the essence of God? You just eat matzah mindlessly on Seder night, and you've connected to the core essence of God? Good question. But he could have said just the same, Isanu, as commanded us. Furthermore, we need to understand in his question, he says, Maha edus v'achukim v'mishpatim. What are the testimonies? Testimonies are the laws, for example, Shabbos, holidays, tefillin. They're a testimony on the oneness of God. Right? They are things that are not logical on their own, but once they've been given, we appreciate the logic in it. Anybody who's observed Shabbos appreciates the logic in Shabbos, the day that you are forbidden to touch your phone. Logically, you would never come to it. Never. No one. They've tried. Many people have tried, make it. Yeah, they make one day a year, day free of any device or any vice, right? It doesn't work. But once God gives the command, we appreciate, we understand, it makes sense, Shabbos. And likewise, no one would come to be putting on tefillin. God gives the command and we understand it. Oh, there's some logic to it. So that's the first thing that's mentioned. Then mishpatim. Chukim. Chukim are those things that are beyond logic, that they are a decree, like the red heifer, or like the laws of impurity, that a person touches or is in a room, a closed room with a corpse, they become impure. A logical thing. Even after the law is given, okay, we give understanding and parameters to the law, we understand it, right? But we won't say that it is, something that's really a logical thing. Okay. And then mishpatim, ordinances, laws like thou shalt not murder, steal, or laws of acquisition or business law, that if the Torah, God forbid, were not given, we would come to it on our own. So there's, in the three categories of laws, you can go from below to above or above to below, meaning there's two directions, right? You can start with the lower, which is logic, mishpatim. Then you come to edus, testimonies, right? That have a logic to it once it's been given. And then you come to that which is beyond logic. Or you go the other way around, right? First, chukim, beyond logic, edus, with testimony, that have a logic to it once we have been given the mitzvah, like Shabbos. And then, not to be a thief, which is logical, even if the Torah would not be given, we would understand the rationale in it. So those are those are the natural two orders of how it should be stated, the question from the Ben Chacham. But that's not what he says. He first says the middle one, edus, the one that are a testimony. That's what he says first, that have some logic to it, not based on logic. And then saying the one that's beyond logic, and then the one that has rationale on its own. So why that order? Moreover, the response to the Chacham, to this wise son, is only with one kind of mitzvah, chukim. These are the chukim, these are the statutory laws, the laws that are beyond logic that God has commanded us. Really now? God's commanded us three different types of mitzvahs. Why in the response do we mention only one? And the answer that we give to the Ben Chacham, by the way, if you want to see the verses in the Torah, go to the book of Deuteronomy, Devarim, chapter 6, verse 20. A few verses thereafter. Verse 20 is the question, and then afterwards comes the answer. So we got a lot of questions here that we need to understand. Furthermore, we ask a question. Furthermore, we're saying that his question is about how can a mere action without the intent fulfill and connect you to the divine? Now, of course, just parenthetically, of course, God wants the intent also, right? Not to eat matzah mindlessly or to put on your tefillin and you know, and not be present. But the three categories are about intent. One mitzvah, you do it, chukim, you do it because it's beyond logic. Edus, you do it because it's a command that is, everything you got to do because God said, even murder. But yet there's a rationale to it. There's that intent, right? He should have asked in his question, not why are these three categories? The three categories are about intent. Should have asked the question, why are the mitzvahs, what are these mitzvahs that our God has commanded us? Meaning now after the giving of the Torah, that through an action, we are connected to God merely through an act of doing the mitzvah. When you break it down into three categories, the three categories are about the uniqueness of intent within each category. All mitzvahs you have to do because God commanded. The ones that are beyond logic, that's it. The ones that are testimonies, you can also appreciate the logic in it. And the ones that are ordinances, like theft, even more understanding of the intent of that mitzvah, that it has a rationale to it. He should have just asked, not about the three categories. It's not about three categories of mitzvahs. It's about the idea of a mitzvah, that it could be done just by an act, in the act of the mitzvah, that you are attached to God. That should have been the question. But that's not the question. The question is in the three categories. So we got a bunch of questions. And guess what? Tomorrow, we'll start with some answers. Thank you for joining. We'll see you soon.